horse all right?
Just a few scratches, I think. Poor old Harry's had it by the look of things.
Yes, too much brandy in his stirrup cup. Yes.
But will he live?
Oh, he won't get over this. Look at his eyes rolling.
Poor bloody horse. I blame Harry.
No. Harry's eyes. I'm talking about Harry. He's broken his neck.
Oh, I say, what a damn shame.
Let's help the horse.
Poor bloody horse.
Cut down in his prime.
Then the American ambassador went to see the Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary, Mr. Stewart, joined in the talks. No communique was issued afterwards. We've just received news that Sir Harry Blakerswood, the Conservative MP for West Barset and former Minister of Fine Arts, has been killed in a hunting accident in Lincolnshire. His horse has also had to be shot. Sir Harry, who was 56, had a majority of over 14,000 in the general election last October. His death brings the number of by-elections due or pending to 4.
Oh, my God.
Now, tonight's sports news. The England under-23 team announced...
Anne, did you hear that?
Yes.
My God, poor old Blakerswood.
Cut down in his prime.
They want me to stand again. Don't you realise? I shall have to go through all that loudspeaker misery and that door knocking all over again.
Only this time you'll be defending the government.
What's so funny? What's even funny about this?
Oh, but there is. This time you'll have to be Tweedledum, not Tweedledee. Oh, never mind. Excuse me. I should try and get out of it if I were you.
Oh, but I can't. I'll have to stand.
Why?
Well, it's only about 6 months since I stood there in the general election.
Exactly. The Globe aren't going to like you pushing off against the Soon for 3 weeks.
Well, I can't rat on them now. I can't slink away like every other candidate in the history of that gov-sane constituency.
You want to stand, don't you?
Well, of course I don't. But I'll have to. It's my duty.
Oh, come on now, Nigel. You quite enjoy it in a way. There's a little bit of the charlatan in you.
Oh, no, not again.
What do you mean by that?
You. Every time I grin at a fool or shake hands with an oily alderman, you're hovering in the background, being all pure and disapproving.
Well, look at the company you keep. Nobody could be more crooked than your agent.
Listen, Jack Hay is a cynic out of self-protection. But he gets Labour councillors elected and he begs money to print posters and people to plod the streets canvassing. While you're gabbling about alienation or the workers' control over the fifth cup of coffee.
Jack Hay hasn't got an idea in his little fat head.
Well, I don't like him particularly, but he knows his job. And he'll take it for granted that I'll stand again.
More fool you, then. Oh. It's a totally hopeless seat, Nigel. Well, I wouldn't mind if you stood the faintest glimmer of a chance.
Yes, I know. It'll all be very humiliating. Pour me a drink, please.
Oh, good idea. Here. You'll need to be fairly tipsy to tout that tatty red rosette all round those muddy villages all over again.
Hey, I can just see myself about a month from now enjoying away at a bunch of stupid old women in a ramshackle village hall. I'll talk about Vietnam, and they'll ask me about the smell from the sewage farm on the main Bartlett Road.
Compromise, compromise. That's the way for you to rise.
Jack Hay, I'll bet,
Hello?
asking me to stand again.
Right first time. The poor man's Ramsay MacDonald. Yeah.
Hello, Jack. Yes. Yes, I have heard the news, Jack. My position? Oh, well, I don't know about that, Jack. Well, it all seems so pointless somehow. All those dreary villages.
Oh, yes, Nigel, I thought you might feel a bit peeved.
I'm not peeved, Jack.
But I think it'd be a fool to turn it down. It could be your big chance.
Big chance, do you mean it?
Well, of course I mean it.
I don't know, Jack. Look, we've been through all this before.
Yes, but a by-election's very different, old mate, don't you see?
No, I don't.
Well, you've got big-name speakers, big issues.
Really?
Yeah, the press, TV cameras.
Oh?
Lots of public interest, excited audiences.
We could just have a minute of the last meeting, please. It won't take a jiffy, Mr.
Barton.
Barton.
That's okay.
Minutes of the meeting of the Waddingford Labour Women's Group. held on Friday the 5th of March, 1965. Apologies were received from Mrs. Ennis and from Mrs. Hughes on account of her husband's illness. Gallbladder, wasn't it, Mrs. Thompson?
Inflamed.
Nasty, that. And there were present 9 members, not counting Mrs. Ennis and Mrs. Hughes. A raffle was held, the jam sponge being won by Mrs. Baker. Then Miss Birrell read to us from her bird book. Afterwards,
I daren't laugh. It might set him off giggling, which would never do. A parliamentary candidate, like a magistrate sentencing a teenage trollop, must never, ever giggle. I'm his agent, you see. It's my job to know these little things, as well as brush the dandruff from his shoulders.
Or points arising from these minutes? No? Good-o. Now, ladies, and gentlemen, of course, I have very great pleasure indeed in introducing you to Mr. Nigel Barton, who, as some of you will have already heard, is going to stand again in the by-election here. He is very welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Barton has kindly agreed to talk to us about... What is it you're going to talk about, Mr. Barton?
The origins of the present crisis.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that'll be very nice. And afterwards, we can have our raffle, ladies. The prize this week is a half-pound packet of tea and a jar of Mrs. Thompson's homemade marmalade. You can go on now, love.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. Well, when I said the origins of the present crisis, I expect you thought that that was a pretty formidable task. Crisis? I mean, you might say, what crisis? Things aren't as bad as they're painted, I've heard people say. After all, we've got a Labour government at long, long last. And as we look around us, dazzled by the chromium glitter, there seem very few obvious or alarming signs of a crisis. The society we have come to know does not seem to be under any stress of any kind at all. After all, the good lady sitting over there with the knitting needles is not at all like the formidable and ferocious Madame Defarge of the guillotine, watching and waiting with merciless eyes while society heaves up in a...
I'm sorry, I'm sure.
Oh, no. No, good Lord, no. I like to see you knitting, really I do. Well, I was just trying to make rather a feeble joke, that's all.
You're not going to drink that, are you, Mr. Barton?
Well, yes, of course, if you've no objection.
Oh, Mr. Barton! Mr. Barton! I don't like to tell you.
What them there flowers coming?
I see, yes. Very good. I thought for a minute there that my flies were undone.
It's a crying shame, I know. But they don't want to know about the balance of payments, and they don't want to know about flies. You might say they're frigid about ideology, too. The only Marx they care about is linked with Spencer, not Engels. Poor old Nigel.
Excitement, you said. Passion.
Well, if you'd kept on about your flies, that's exactly what you'd have got.
It's not funny, Jack.
Okay.
Homemade marmalade, nutty women knitters, and Miss Birrell and her bird book.
Now, Nigel. This is politics too, you know. My advice to you is, give him a bit of the old come to Jesus. Try not to be too clever, eh?
I don't regard clever as a dirty word.
Rule 1. It's never clever to appear to be clever. Long words actually hurt people, you know that? Rule 2. Speak slowly and clearly, as though to a bunch of malignant kids. Rule 3. Keep it short, very short. Half-truths take less time than whole ones, old mate. And you've let your locks sprout a bit since October, haven't you? Get 'em cut, there's a good chap. Rolling Stones gather no votes.
You know, my wife's right to despise all this, Jack. You make it sound so grubby. I was looking forward to a bit of genuine controversy. Now, there was a speaker for you. I bet he was never asinine enough to swig the daffodil water.
Good bloke, old Nye. In his way.
In his way? You should have heard him at the Suez demonstration in Trafalgar Square. He was marvellous.
Anthony Eden has been pretending that he is now invading Egypt in order to strengthen the United Nations. Every burglar, of course, could say the same thing. He could argue that he was entering the house in order to train the police. So if Mr. Anthony Eden is sincere in what he is saying, and he may be, then if he is sincere in what he is saying, then he is too stupid to be a Prime Minister.
Lost us a lot of votes there, did that Suez lark. Our local chairman says we should have gone right on through there and not stopped till we come out at the other end with a couple of wogs still stuck on our bayonets. Hates wogs, he does. I shouldn't bring Suez up again if I was you.
Drive me to the station, Jack. I've got a stinking headache.
Can't believe it was that bad, darling.
But it was, I tell you. Terrible, obscene, grotesque.
There you are. Thank you. And very, very boring.
And very, very boring.
Oh, dear.
Just a bunch of stupid old women who prefer to raffle jam sponges and discuss the bank rate.
Well, it sounds to me as if you're more concerned with getting their votes than giving them an honest analysis of the situation.
That's right.
Very smug, aren't you?
That's right.
I don't know why you wanted to be a Labour candidate in the first place. I thought your socialism meant more to you than that.
Oh, jolly ho-hum.
That was not meant as a joke, for your information.
I know, mate. That's the tragedy. You were more deeply upset by a bad review for a Brecht play than a Labour by-election defeat.
And just how are you building the new Britain, messing about like this?
Messing about? Oh, yes, messing about. Making dreary party speeches to a half-dozen elderly malcontents in drafty halls covered in chocolate brown paint.
And for what? Tell me that.
Get off.
Well, go on, tell me.
I can't, I'm too
All
tired.
right, I'll tell you. Labour colonial secretaries hobnobbing with corrupt old shapes. Labour defence ministers paying for Polaris on the Never Never. Harold being buddy-buddy with Lyndon. That's what for, Nigel. That's your signpost for the 60s. Well, what are you glaring at me like that for? Can't you take it?
You'll never understand, will you?
What?
What? Your parents...
Here we go again.
Your parents marked their so-called disillusionment with the 1945 government by switching from the New Statesman to the Economist. It's very moving, that. It's heart-rending.
There were good reasons at the time.
Oh, sure. Must have been shattering for them. It's like when my dad found out his pit manager was the same bloke under the NCB as he was under private ownership.
There you are, then, a betrayal.
Exactly. Nearly broke the poor old bloke's heart, he did. Refused to have his bread and dripping sandwiches wrapped in the New Statesman. Walked up and down the pit bottom he did with his butties, debating whether or not the Economist didn't better reflect the current political situation.
Don't throw all that up at me, just because you had the advantage of being born in a working-class home.
The advantage? Ha! You silly flaming cow.
My office. I'm sorry about all this, but we in the Labour Party link drabness with idealism, see? I'm a paid agent of the party, of course, but when I want to find out what's going on, I have to ring up the Conservative Central Office. It's a very plush place, that. Carpets plucking at your bleeding ankles. You see, they link drabness with idealism, too. Still, it's Nigel you want to hear about. Well, last October, he seemed to me to be a fine candidate. Dishonest in a way that reeked of sincerity. Evasive in a way that seemed embarrassingly frank. Upright when creeping.
dignified when it is most stupid. In fact, a potential cabinet minister, if ever I saw one. And a much, much better bloke than we had any right to expect in a safe Tory stronghold like this. Oh, excuse me. Oh, hell. Oh?
It's Father O'Malley.
Oh, Father O'Malley.
Oh, could I speak to Mr. Hayes?
Yes, speaking.
Oh, would your candidate be able to speak to the CPA perhaps next week?
Oh, yes, Father. Mr. Barton will be too pleased to meet a delegation of Catholic parents.
Splendid. Now, what about next Friday?
Friday, now, let me see. Well, at 11 o'clock, he's got a meeting with the local family planning associate. With the, I'm sorry, Father, but I think probably Monday would be more convenient. 12 o'clock Monday. Fine. Right. Thank you, Father. Goodbye. Democracy's so complicated. Oh, which reminds me, we ought to send a friendly little note to the anti-fluoride in the drinking water lot, the Lord's Day Observance Society, the Keep Bread Pure group, and the CND. No, never mind the CND. Cranks can look after themselves. Now, where the heck was I? Oh, yes. Nigel Barton, for all his brains, could still be made into a pretty shrewd operator. That's my job. I'm quite good at it, too, considering the pay. Listen.
I will just ask you, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, to remember that since February the 1st, you have not had to pay a penny piece in prescription charges.
That's right.
Not one single penny piece, ladies and gentlemen. Now, contrast this with the shameful wreck which the Tories tried to make out of what was designed to be a fine and splendid health service. Envy of the world. Consider the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Just the plain, unvarnished facts.
Well, some of them, anyway.
In June 1952, only 8 months after they returned to misrule this country, the Tories slapped a shilling charge on each prescription.
Shame.
How typical. In December 1952, they put a shilling charge on each item on the prescription. A big enough tax on the sick, you might think. Quite big enough. But no, oh dear me, no. They wanted even more. What does hardship matter to them?
They don't care.
They don't, madam. So in February 1961, this sad and sorry bunch of superannuated old Etonians put a 2 shilling charge on each item.
Disgraceful.
It is disgraceful, madam. That's an extra £12.5 million
Shameful.
squeezed out of the pockets of the sick.
Shame. Bleeding heart rending, innit?
Money viciously squeezed out of those people least able to afford it. For many of these people were old age pensioners.
Horrifying.
Remember too, madam, that at the same time, my friends, the charges for hospital amenity beds, welfare foods, false teeth, and spectacles were bumped up outrageously.
So they were.
And who, I ask you, who is most likely to need false teeth and spectacles?
You.
Why? The old age pensioner. Hit again and hit hard. Do not let us forget this previous callousness when polling day comes.
Excuse me, but wasn't it the Labour government which first introduced charges for false teeth and glasses?
Well, I suppose you'll be talking about the groundnut scheme next.
Answer the question. Wasn't it the Labour government that first introduced charges on the national health?
You misunderstand the situation, my dear sir. These charges, these very, very small charges, were brought in as a temporary measure. Temporary, madam. I do wish to emphasize that, ladies and gentlemen, a purely temporary measure. It was during the crisis forced upon us by the Korean War. It was an act of patriotism, sir, not vindictive and parsimonious cheesepeg.
Then why did Harold Wilson resign at the time?
Isn't he patriotic?
Smear.
Exactly, a smear. I wonder why it is when some of our opponents start to lose an argument, they always revert to the most vile form of personal abuse. I talk about patriotism and some of you start to sling mud. Now, the next question, please, from someone less bigoted, if you don't mind.
You see what I mean? A splendid candidate. The kind of bloke I'd never buy a second-hand car from.
I thought that answer was a bit slippery, Jack.
Oh, so is the question, my lad.
Nigel's beginning to talk like a shot.
Yeah, about bloody time, too.
Cynic.
Look, ideas, or whatever you call them, don't count for tuppence round here. These people want a rousing piece of good old-fashioned tub-thumping, not a lecture on the bank rate.
He'll be asking for drum majorettes next.
But why not? Anything to liven things up a bit.
You make Machiavelli sound like Godfrey Wolfe.
Well, God knows elections are dull enough anyway. If you start dragging honesty in as well, then everybody will stay at home and watch the wrestling.
It's about time you did start dragging in
Big business is pumping out its loot into the already bloated Tory exchequer to make sure that its fat profits and its price-fixing, market-carving inefficiency is well protected by the landlord's pet party. Pet party, madam. Ladies and gentlemen, 8 out of 10 Conservative members of Parliament are directly and profitably linked with big business and high finance through their company directorships. Small wonder that the under-the-counter subsidies flow in. Small wonder. But all the cash, all the distortions, all the happy slogans chirruping through the air cannot hide the crucial nature of the vital choice that has to be made.
Black or white, darling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love, I don't care.
Well, have it black then. Here. I should take a sleeping pill with this if I were you. You were tossing about in your sleep last night like somebody with a fever.
I'm sorry. I know I had a nightmare of sorts. Oh, this is a hell of a period, Anna.
You were talking in your sleep, too.
Was I? What did I say?
End the speculation in land prices.
Well, there you are, you see. You see what I mean? Hey. What else did I say?
Oh, it didn't seem very interesting, so I didn't listen. I'm getting a bit bored with your slogans. I don't want them in bed, too.
Well, I don't see why not. My dad often used to talk about politics when he was in bed with our mum.
How do you know?
I've told you. There was only sort of a curtain between their half of the room and the place where we kids slept. But we didn't wipe our snotty noses on our sleeves.
You didn't say anything.
And we didn't break wind when we had visitors.
Oh, don't be so sensitive.
Sensitive? Every time we go back home, back to the hovel, you smile and smile.
I never rude to your parents, if that's what you mean.
Well, of course you aren't. Nothing so human. You admire the rosebud wallpaper and the flying ducks like the Queen Mother being gracious in a council house.
You know perfectly well it would be hurtful if I was, well, too honest with them.
Listen to the condescension. You were brought up to assuage your guilt by smiling at the window cleaner and over-tipping the dustbin man. Do come in. Would you like a cup of coffee? Or I expect you prefer a cup of cha. Ha ha. I'm sorry. Now, don't sulk. You know very well what I mean.
That I'm eaten up with guilt. It's not true.
Well, why do we snipe at each other like this?
Because you're the guilty one, or ought to be.
Well, here we go again. Unlike you, I was head over heels in love with the idea of Oxford before I ever got there. I couldn't wait to get my hands round the slim, cool stem of that first glass of sherry. Sweet or dry, they say. As if I knew the difference.
But you do now.
There was a time when everything at home disgusted me. Magazines being called books. Books being called rubbish. And every discussion degenerating into a personal argument. I can't tell you.
No, but you have many times.
But when I got to Oxford, when I grew up a bit, and I came to know what it felt like to be torn out by the roots and educated into suave treachery, well, then I started reversing everything. I threw the sherry back into the smug face that gave it to me. I started listening to my father for the first time, instead of laughing at him behind my hand.
Well, there's nothing unique about that. It's been well documented in Jackson and Marsden's book, Education in the Working Classes.
Thank you, Lady Anne. Do you agree, Bishop? And if so, does it matter?
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bishop, we've run out of time again. Next week's meeting point will discuss the slums of Liverpool with the Bishop of London, an eminent fashion designer, and Gogo the clown.
Shut up! Oh. Yours is the worst form of betrayal. Your own memory tells you clearly enough what politics is about. And yet you sneer at ideas, you sneer at ideology, you sneer at theory and reduce everything to petty little slogans for cheap party advantage.
Tone deaf and colour blind. Look, I have to say the sort of things the party workers want to hear. They're out in all winds and weathers beating the big drum. They'll turn up with posters on the Day of Judgment. I can't be a virgin pure intellectual to them. I can't tell them I don't even know the words of the red flag.
You've got nothing to lose in a seat like West Barset. It wouldn't hurt you to be a bit more honest.
I'm just a beginner, a nobody. They're voting for the party, not for me. I could be a pink-eyed rabbit for all the difference I make. Besides, I'm out with a loudspeaker van tomorrow. You try and be honest through an amplifier.
God made you and I. Each and every one of us God has made. Remember, on polling day, let's go with Labour. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nigel Barton, your Labour candidate. On polling day, let's go with Labour and we'll get things done. This is your vote of confidence to the new Labour government, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go with Labour and we'll get things done. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nigel Barton, your Labour candidate. Remember, on polling day, let's go with Labour and we'll get things done. Let's go with Labour, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get things done.
Excuse me.
Certainly, sir.
You're talking a load of rubbish.
So are you.
Remember, when the time comes, let's go with Labour.
And we'll all get done.
Well, you certainly put that bloke in his place.
Did I, Hal?
You made him angry, that's the main thing.
The main thing?
Every time, old mate. Now, the only object of this exercise is to let people know we're alive and kicking. It's always the Tories who play everything as quiet as the grave. Mum's the word with that lot.
Mum presumably possessing a large flowery hat and a passion for capital punishment.
Pardon?
Never mind. OK, Jack, is this the road we've got to canvass?
It is.
I'd rather we didn't.
Oh, come on, meet the people. Oh, grab hold of those canvas cards in the back, will you? You know, the trouble with you bloody intellectuals is you're frightened of the masses. Now, all we want to know is whether they're for, against, or doubtful. Grim for 4, beam handsomely and persuasively for doubtful, and ignore the other sods.
The Labour, is it?
The Labour Party, madam.
I'd just like to know whether I can count on your support in the coming by-election. I'm sure you realise its importance.
Well, I've lived here 50 years, woman and girl.
Really?
I've had 2 husbands, buried both the bastards, and all that time I've never voted. No, this time I shan't neither.
Oh, well, pardon me, madam, but don't you think you ought?
Ought? Ought? Did you say ought?
Well, what my colleague meant was...
Everybody ought to vote.
Oh, there's too much ought, Sonny. Ought to have a telly licence. Ought to have a dog licence. Ought to have your age cut. Ought to pay the race dog time. Ought to wash your hands after you go to the lab. Ought to pay threepence for it, too. Ought to go to church. Ought to stand for the national anthem. Ought to help the hungry. Ought to avoid the rush hour. Ought not to drive and drink. Ought to post early for Christmas. Ought to be thankful. And all those oughts are about money, Sonny. And nobody says they ought to give me that.
Ah, well, yes, we do, up to a point.
Up to your point, yes, not mine, Sonny.
Well, then, can you tell me, simply for our records, you understand, are you more inclined to support us, or...
I'm not in sympathy with any of you. It's all promises now, innit, eh? Butter wouldn't melt in your open mouths, would it?
I don't think you quite...
Then up go prices, up goes the rents, up goes the taxes, up goes electricity, gas, coal, price of fags, and God knows what else. Right up. I know, Sonny. You can't kid me.
We're not interested in kidding you, as you
And
put
I
it.
can't stop here gassing no more. I got a dinner going. And I ought to get that ready, oughtn't I, eh?
Mark her as doubtful, will you?
Hey, knock again, Jack. I thought I saw a face peep out from behind that window.
They're hiding, you know. The bastards are hiding.
Jack, shh! Oh, excuse me?
Well, they probably think we're Jehovah's Witnesses. There are lots of them round these parts.
Oh, let's leave them in peace.
My mummy says not today, thank you very much.
Shall I knock once more?
What's the use?
Do the Tories think we're going to perpetuate their 13 long, miserable years of misrule? I ask you to remember my previous remarks about their ridiculous mismanagement of their so-called Ministry of Agriculture. Now, this should be a subject close to all of you listening to me here today. It concerns you. It will concern you on polling day. So remember, when the time comes, let's go with Labour and we'll get things done. Polling day is next week. Remember, vote Labour and we'll get things done.
Good morning. Mrs. Phillips, isn't it? We're from the Labour Party.
Oh, yes.
We'd just like to know, Mrs. Phillips, whether you intend to support us in the very important by-election next week.
Oh, yes.
I mean, do you think it likely that you and your husband will be voting Labour this time?
Oh, I see.
Well?
I thought we'd had the election.
Oh, that's right, Mrs. Phillips, but this is a by-election. The member who got in last October was killed in a hunting accident.
Oh, dear. I hope the fox got away, though.
Our records show that both you and your husband both voted Labour in October. I hope nothing's happened to make you change your mind. I mean, will you be supporting us again this time?
Well, I'm in the middle of cooking dinner at the moment.
Well, this won't take a jiffy.
We simply want to find out where our supporters are. It'll save a lot of time on polling day.
Well, my Ronnie's always been Labour.
Good, good.
It's the party for the working man, he says.
Ah, well then, can we
He
take...
says, will you be doing anything about them blacks?
Pardon?
Swarming all over they be, my Ronnie says, like flies round a jar of honey.
Well, of course, it is our policy to look closely at the immigration bill.
Oh, that's right, Mrs. Phillips.
But you must understand we don't intend to exclude people merely on the grounds of their colour alone. There's no place for the second-class citizen in Britain.
That's what my Ronnie says. They should stay in their own places, shouldn't they?
Believe me, there have been better mornings. Sometimes you can get a doorstep conversion, Billy Graham style. But most of the time they tell you what they think you want to hear. I could see all this raw politics upset poor old Nigel like nobody's business. He's over there behind that hedge. Being sick? He had this old-fashioned idea that, well, I don't like to say it really, that, well, conviction and passion, I do beg your pardon, folks, really I do, should come into it somewhere. I had a candidate once who felt very strongly about the moral issues raised by myxomatosis. Look, mate, I said, rabbits, so far as I'm aware, have never yet had the vote. Mind you, I'm an animal lover too. I've always advocated that the party that proposed family allowances for dogs would sweep the country. And it'll come. It'll come. Ah, Nigel. Feeling better now?
Yes, I'll do.
Yeah, canvassing can make you throw up if you're the sensitive type.
Oh, no, no. No, it wasn't that. It was those cheese and tomato sandwiches.
Really? Well, come on, let's have a snifter before lunch. Ah, it'll all be over in 10 days. Then you can go back to your nice, cosy home and your nice, cosy illusions, me old son.
Why don't you shut your fat face?
Now.
You ooze cynicism, Jack, from every pore. All this smart talk. No wonder it makes me throw up.
What do you think it makes me feel, eh? I'm sorry, old mate. The mask slipped.
Well, why keep it there in the first place?
Look, if I stick my tongue out of the system, I'd soon get it cut off. So I keep it in my cheek instead.
And you enjoy it, Jack.
Let's get one crooked thing straight, Nigel, shall we? I work the system as it is, not as you think it ought to be. Half a loaf's better than no loaf at all. Stick by the rules and you can get things done.
So why the cheap jokes?
Cheap? When I was a kid, my old man used to keep us away from school on Empire Days, so we wouldn't have to wave one of those little Union Jacks. We were the richest country in the world at that time, so I'm told. Half the bleeding Atlas red, and my old man bow-legged with malnutrition. Us kids nearly died laughing.
And?
Well, I've been laughing ever since, haven't I? You're the one that was sick, not me. Put a few sniggers between yourself and the world, Nigel. You don't bruise so easy that way.
Jack, I never realized.
No? Oh, well. One day, when you're on the front bench, you'll look back on all this as the time when you finally grew up. Even angry young men eventually kiss the Queen's white-gloved hand, you know.
God help me. I suppose even that's possible. Oswald Mosley was once a promising young Labour politician, too.
Are you going to talk about unemployment today?
Why, of course. It is the one problem that really matters today. We live in a period in which politicians are not very popular. And believe me, you have my sympathy. We live in a period when Britain can only survive by vigor and by action. I am not one of those who believes this country is down and out. I am also not one of those who believes that we can just muddle through. We have resources of intellect, of energy, of craftsmanship, of skill, second to none in the world. But those resources must be mobilized for a great effort of a united nation.
The Labour government, cruelly harassed by the mess left behind by the scuttling aristocrats, has had to mobilize all our resources for a great effort of a united nation. That is the message we've got to get across. Now, I'm very grateful to you as the General Management Committee of this constituency party for turning out on such a wet and windy night.
Hear, hear.
But our task is clear. It is to remove all fears of a narrow, restrictive, dogmatic socialism and replace it with a party solidly committed to an incomes policy, technological advance, educational reforms, and economic efficiency. That is the message we've got to get across. And we must all pull together to carry it to the voters of this hitherto solidly conservative constituency. Thank you.
Young man, I'd be
been listening to your remarks with the greatest interest and sympathy. But I'm grieved to have to say that that is not the sort of red-blooded socialism I was brought up on.
Here, here.
Blow the bloody bugle, bang the bloody drum, blast the bloody bourgeoisie to bloody kingdom come. That's what my father used to chant. God rest his soul. And there are a good many more verses attached to it, too.
Oh, that's all very well, Mrs. Morris. We all like to hear these grand old echoes from the noble history of our movement. But what on earth would the floating voter, with his house, his car, and his 2.8 children, say to such a battle cry?
I think you pay far too much attention to the so-called floating voter.
Here, here.
Let the floating voter sink. Don't throw him a lifeline.
There are too many traitors to the working classes.
No. Jack Hay isn't a traitor. Far from it.
Oh, thank you very much, madam.
I think you must be full of pain, Mr. Hay.
Oh, it's my stomachache.
I think you must have been a very great idealist. No one could dare to be as cynical as you pretend to be without having known what it is to believe and to hope. I saw you with tears in your eyes at the time of Suez.
Oh, I'd been peeling onions.
Very well, hide your feelings if you must. But don't make Mr. Barton like yourself. He's only just beginning. Oh, I know you may be trying to save him from despair and disappointment, but these things are part of our struggles. We've always been let down by our own kind, and you can't bear it, can you, Jack? As for you, Mr. Barton, if the young haven't the guts to be audacious and full of fire instead of clever and full of statistics, there's not much hope for any of us. Socialism isn't something to apologize for. Nor is it something to be wrapped up in Sunday Times editorials.
Mrs. Morris, I don't think you altogether understand. I admire your spirit. Words like yours will always stir the heart. But I wonder if the time hasn't come.
When I said the Tories were worse than vermin, he was only speaking the truth, Mr. Barton.
Here, here. Stand by the workers.
Well, certainly, sir. But will they stand by me?
Yes, if you give them a lead.
But if we don't appeal to the don't-knows and the middle-of-the-roaders, we'll be doomed again to perpetual opposition and eternal impotence. Well, there's no glory in that.
I'd rather be in opposition forever, so long as we keep the purity of our ideals.
The people's
flag is deepest red, it shrouded oft our martyred dead. And ere their limbs grew stiff and cold, their heart's blood dyed its every fold. Then raised the scarlet standard high, within its shade we'll live or die. Though cowards flinch,
the more hopeless the chances of victory in any seat, the more pure the party member. Burke's Law.
I really don't see much point in carrying on with this charade. Jack?
Oh, don't start all that again. You're doing a good job, mate. Don't you worry.
I feel like a real zombie at that meeting.
Oh, you've just got a touch of the nerves, Nigel.
I shouldn't be surprised if the Tory doesn't increase his majority.
Rubbish. I reckon that with any luck, a bit of the old sunshine and Quentin Hogg on the telly on the eve of poll, and we'll chop the Tory majority in half.
I don't know. I don't seem to be able to get through as a decent human being at all.
Well, you don't want to do that, mate. You'll probably be had up for a breach of parliamentary privilege or something.
You do cheer me up, Jack.
Well, here's something else to make you happy.
What?
The personal touch. Here's a list of some people recently bereaved in the constituency. Might be a good idea to drop them a line. A few kind words. Nothing I can say can possibly alleviate the distress. You know the kind of stuff.
You don't really want me to do that, do you?
Well, if you would, Albin, if you would. It's the personal touch that counts. Grief therapy. It's standard practice for keen candidates.
Oh, my God.
I've marked the names of the dear departed and the complaints that finished them off, plus the names and addresses of the next of kin. It should be right up your street. You're very keen on this personal interest lark, aren't you?
And there, I admit, I made a great mistake. A deadly error. This harmless little request seemed to be the last straw as far as Nigel was concerned. It seemed to sting him in the forehead, if you follow me. I bet he brooded about it all night long. You wouldn't think that one cancer of the lung, 2 heart failures, a ruptured spleen, a perforated ulcer, an infected gallbladder, and a case of convulsions could cause quite so much damage, would you?
Damn and blast this disgusting nonsense.
Those letters.
I'm not going to do them.
Well, I should think not. You should have refused point blank in the first place.
I know. I know. Prissy little cow. Aren't you?
I'm going to hang one of your posters in the lavatory.
You do then. Anne. Well, listen to me.
Oh, not another long line of self-justification, please.
I'm sick of saying the right things, shaking the right hands, and grinning. Grinning like some fool of a disc jockey.
No wonder people automatically sneer when they say the word politician.
Do they? Perhaps they do.
Look, have you ever once seen a party political broadcast on TV that wasn't almost totally dishonest? Have you ever once seen two politicians arguing with any degree of honesty once they knew they had an audience? Have you ever once...
Now, just a minute.
Yes, well, once. Just once. I'd like to see a candidate who didn't turn into a dishonest slob the moment he set foot on a platform.
Then don't look at me, sweetie. Don't look at me.
I wish I didn't have to.
Okay. Okay, I'll pack my bags when all this is over.
Yes, well, you must do as you think best. You're not much use to me at the moment, anyway.
Oh?
Oh, this blasted by-election has made you impotent as well as crooked. Oh. You're a mess, Nigel, and you don't know it. Oh, darling, I'm sorry.
I still want to do things, Anne. Not theorize or pontificate about them. I don't want to end up like you or your father.
You must do as you please.
Your brave new society will never come because you're incapable of working for it, lying for it, cheating for it, humiliating yourself for it. Your condescending Hampstead socialism collapses at the first belch of wind from a navvy's guts.
Oh, dear.
You can't stand the stink of life, sweetheart.
I'm going to bed. Oh, by the way, don't forget your rosette in the morning.
Yeah. Makes me feel like a prize bull at an agricultural show.
Yes, you've got a point there. Still, she goes well with a prissy cow, doesn't it? Then.
Just a minute.
What you groping for?
Just for a moment.
You're tickling.
Look.
Gee, what hot, passionate breath. Right down mine. Just as well we've been married for 5 years, dear.
Some people don't seem to want to understand the world we live in. Principles I can approve of. I mean, if they don't suit you, change them. But a conscience, that's a very different kettle of offal. I mean, you can't put a price on that. You can't hawk it around. You can't change it to meet the latest opinion poll. I've been trying very hard to save poor old Nigel from his blasted conscience. After all, a lot of very clever people haven't got one at all. But I knew the itch would break out somewhere, sometime, and it did. On the following day, he seemed to be a bit upset. And what a day. In the evening, we had a big civic dinner where the two candidates were due to meet head-on for the first time. The Tory, Captain Hugh Archibald Lake, OBE, RN retired, was the guest of honour, and Nigel had to make a speech too. But before that, in the morning, we had to tour a local old folks' home. I didn't want to take Nigel round the old folks' home, but Captain Hugh Archibald Lake, OBE, RN retired, had done it, so we had no option. We had to give the glad hand to these poor old blighters staring at the radiators. All's fair in love and politics. After all, some of them still had enough strength left to put an X on a ballot paper. Hey, Dad, it's about the one thing they've got left that gives them any sense of importance.
And it's my job to make sure you realise it, isn't it?
Bye, sir.
I don't think he'll know who or what you are. Go gentle.
Yes, nurse. Yes, of course.
Well, go on. Say something.
I can't.
It seems a pity to disturb him.
Well, good morning, sir. Good morning. May I introduce you to Mr. Nigel Barton?
Oh, leave it, Jack.
He's frightened. I think he thinks you're his son-in-law, sir.
Oh, don't you worry, old chap. Don't you worry about a thing.
Have you any problems? I mean...
We shall have to help this one fill up his ballot paper.
I'm afraid the Conservative agent has already arranged that, sir.
Heartless bum.
Shall we move on?
Thank you, nurse.
Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye.
Oh, look after yourself.
Well, ta-ra, old chap. Keep your pecker up. Oh, that's one more for Archibald Lake.
For goodness sake, Jack, try and behave a bit more like a...
Human being? I'm sorry, mate. I'm too old to change my job now.
This is Mr. Harrison.
Ah.
Mr. Harrison.
He's had his left leg amputated. Poor old fella.
How are you, sir? Are they looking after you?
Well, good morning, sir. Good morning. May I introduce you to Mr. Nigel Barton, your Labour candidate?
I don't think he's feeling too well today, gentlemen.
I'm very pleased to meet you, sir.
My leg.
I beg your pardon? Is there anything I can do for you, sir?
Can you get me another leg?
Well, Nigel?
Another leg.
He'll never walk again.
Can you get me another leg?
We're doing what we can, Mr. Barton.
They keep me waiting, you know, waiting.
Well, we'll see what we can do to hurry him up, Mr.
Harrison.
That's our job, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Barton, your Labour candidate, will see what he can do.
I only want my leg.
Mr. Hay, I know that politics are a matter of promises.
That's right, nurse. Promises. Give us the details of this case and we'll see, shall we?
Come this way, gentlemen. There'll be tea and biscuits in the front office for you.
Thank you, nurse.
It's been very nice meeting you, sir.
I only want my leg.
Well, goodbye, sir.
My leg.
Come on, Nigel. Let's have a cup of char and talk about the affluent society.
This way, gentlemen. This way.
I only want my leg.
Well, that was a rum sort of do, wasn't it?
I'd rather not talk about it.
Oh, well, you can have a kip this afternoon. I shan't need you till this dinner with the knobs tonight. Oh, come on. We all get old, you know.
Do I have to go to this function, Jack? Is it absolutely necessary?
Absolutely, old bean.
Dinner jacket and all?
Naturally.
It seems so obscene after all that.
Well, let's get things straight about this, Nigel. The Barset Annual Council Dinner is by far the most important civic event in the whole constituency. It's very lucky for us that it happens to fall during the by-election. You learnt your speech?
Of course. And it's very polite.
Good. Remember, you're right in the heart of the enemy country. Anne's coming, of course.
I'm not sure.
Well, she'll have to come, Nigel. We haven't reached the stage of interviewing the candidate's missus yet, like the Tories, but it's vital that she tag along looking sweet.
Sweet and innocent.
Exactly. So make sure she comes, old mate. And don't forget to show the bastards you can be as smooth as any of them. The voters like to think their politicians are gentlemen.
Oh, I'll be smooth. I'll be smooth, all right. I'll be as smooth as a ribbon of toothpaste.
worship the Mayor, my lord, ladies and gentlemen, pray silence for your guest of honour, Captain Hugh Archibald Lake, companion of the Distinguished Service Order, officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, Conservative and Unionist candidate for the parliamentary constituency of West Barsetshire.
Mr. Mayor, my lord, ladies and gentlemen, I sympathize with you. No, really, I do. After-dinner speeches can too often be a torment. Now, who wants to add a flow of mere words to the slow and enjoyable processes of digestion after such a splendid meal as the one we've all enjoyed? Truly a splendid feast.
Yeah.
Yes. But I have one simple rule specially designed to alleviate any possible discomforts. It is, keep it short, keep it sweet, and to sit down as soon as I finish speaking.
That means an hour-long tirade.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is not my custom on occasions such as this to make controversial speeches, or indeed even unkind speeches, especially as one of my opponents does seem to me to be a trifle, shall we say, just a trifle damp behind the ears. No, but I must admit in all honesty that he seems to me to be an honest, honourable, well-meaning and reasonably patriotic young man. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, that is something we all tend to take too much for granted nowadays. Of course, we have our differences. Very much so at times.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm sure Mr. Barton would agree that in moments of crisis, we all pull together. We defend the same freedoms. We breathe the same air. We stand for the same national anthem. Yeah. Now, I was talking the other day to one of the trades union chappies in my business. He's a shop steward or something. A dratted nuisance he is at times, too. Well, during our little chat, the fellow pulled out of his overall pocket a tabloid newspaper and showed me in it a criticism of our monarchy made by some bilious alien or other. You know, sir, he said, touching his cap, the trouble with these blasted foreigners is they don't understand our traditions. Well, I don't mind telling you that I there and then shook the fellow by the hand, even though it was covered at the time by a thick layer of axle grease. And I am sure that any one of you here present would have done as much.
Oh, dear reporter.
Now, that little incident set me thinking. We may not have won the Ashes last summer, but by golly, we can still teach the rest of the thing a world or two. The rest of the world a thing or two. Who invented penicillin, ladies and gentlemen? Why? A Briton. And jet propulsion, ladies and gentlemen? Why? A Briton. And television? Why? A Briton.
And the water closet.
Personally, I always think of my country when I use these things. I seem to have caused the Labour candidate some amusement. I cannot see that I've said anything particularly funny. Although, of course, I am aware that in certain quarters nowadays it is considered modish to mock at the achievements of our great country. But I am happy to say that in this respect, at least, I am old-fashioned.
I'll be smooth, he said. Smooth.
We have a great deal to be proud of in this country. Do you realize, ladies and gentlemen, that there is nothing to stop any one of your children or your grandchildren from going right to the top, I say. Now, my own son went to Eton, but I don't mind admitting to you here and now that he got one less A-level than my gardener's eldest boy at his local grammar school. So you see, it is absolute nonsense to talk of class warfare anymore. Piffle. Happily, we've moved on from such tedious and outdated dogma. As a former Conservative cabinet minister once remarked, we are all workers now.
I only want me then.
Of course, the angry young men, the assorted pornographers, the seditious television playwrights may jibe and jeer, but I tell you now, with all the emphasis at my command, that during the last 13 years, we have never enjoyed such a high standard of living, such an unexampled degree of peace, or such a time of opportunity and expansion. But sad to say, this fine record is now being put in pawn by our opponents. Now, our own small but thriving community of Barset knows full well what it owes to previous Tory administrations. And as I look round this fine old town, with its fine old buildings and brave new office blocks and impressive traffic jams, I am proud and happy tonight, in the certain knowledge of the confidence that you will all soon place in me, to propose a toast to the Mayor and Mayoress and the councillors of Barset. Long may they prosper.
The toast is the Mayor and Mayoress and members of the Council of Barset. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow.
For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. And so say all of us.
Now you can see what we're up against. The solid backbone of England, no less. A backbone that grows right up into the skull.
Your Worship the Mayor, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen, pray silence for Mr. Nigel Barton, the Labour candidate for the constituency of West Barsetshire.
I too can promise not to keep it too long. No, don't bother. If the same people who clapped the last speaker so enthusiastically also clapped then please don't bother. I can do without it. Do not misunderstand me, ladies and gentlemen. Rudeness for its own sake is a distressing thing.
Hear, hear.
I have no desire to be churlish. It's simply that suddenly I've had enough. More than enough. I too would like to swap bromides with you. I too would like to think of my country's greatness every time I flush the lavatory.
Be polite, I said. Polite.
But no, I'm sorry, I can't join you in this euphoric make-believe. Not anymore.
Hallelujah.
We are not characters out of Alice in Wonderland, are we?
You are.
What's the matter with the fella? Drunk?
Yet we have just had put before us by a man brave enough to shake another's dirty hand the marvelous picture of a hitherto prosperous, classless, opportunity-free Britain basking in a rare contentment. Now, we've all just had a good dinner. A privilege, of course, not enjoyed by the vast majority of the world's people. Fat black flies suck away undisturbed at the vacant eyes of newly born babies, and the dogs wait to eat the watery excrement left by starving beggars on the stinking pavements. But we've eaten well tonight, and no doubt we're all feeling pretty good inside. But that's no reason why we should pretend to believe in rubbish.
Marvelous, great.
Surely the first fact we must face is that all three parties are are stuffed with aged tub thumpers and superannuated old windbags. To most intelligent people, party politics is synonymous with claptrap. To be a candidate is to submit to a personally humiliating experience in which the set smile freezes on your face like the grin on a corpse. Dead ideas, dead thoughts, dead slogans, all of them sicked up on your own doorstep. No wonder people are disgusted by this gruesome charade. This withered apology for conviction, compassion, and passion, which ought to be driving through all the apathy, bewilderment, and cynicism which even the antediluvian guest of honor here tonight realizes is there.
Sit down, sit down,
Just in one moment, sir, as soon as I've filled your 3 bags full, sir.
God, please make him choke.
Let us just examine this myth of affluence, this cheap-jack assumption about the opportunity state. My father, for instance.
Have you got one?
My father has been a coal miner for 41 years. Although it's only fair to say that some of those years were spent on the dole. Some of them were spent kicking tin cans, marching to London. And some of them were even spent eating bread and dripping sandwiches during the grouse shooting season. But now things are better. Oh, yes. People like you don't spit in his eye quite so easily. And my parents have their bingo. And their Daily Mirror. Hand beat the clock at the London Palladium on the telly, which they've also got. Oh, yes, there's no possibility of them being shunted into an old folks' prison. Not while I'm alive, anyway. But my father could draw an apple on the white margin of a newspaper. So good, so ripe, so perfectly rounded and shaded that you just ached to pluck it off the page. When he talks about the past, he remembers the color the sky was. The way the sun glistened and glinted on the belts and buckles of the village brass band. And the slow, damp feel of the mist flopped out along the bottom of the desecrated valley. The dark lane with the drooping trees. Roots heaving up above the poisoned soil. But his talents, so long unused, are now unusable. And his sensibilities, so long blunted and derided in the holy name of the money grubbers, are swallowed up by the bright, gay new exploiters all around us. And if he coughs now and again, if he spits against the hot bars of the grate and makes them sizzle now and again, if he's got the rattle of coal dust in his chest, well, it doesn't really matter very much, does it, folks? He can get into the local cinema, half price, Monday and Wednesday afternoon. And it doesn't matter very much if 1.5 million old-age pensioners have to apply for the national assistance in order to live a reasonably decent life. And that's why I object to the cretinous lies which are being spouted out here tonight. We in Britain have got cricks in our necks from looking backward over our shoulders at the alleged glories of the past. For God's sake, let's try and be honest. Just for once. Or do we have to sell our party politics like the 14th brand of dog food now in the market? Can't even Captain Archibald Lake, bless his patriotic old heart, see the shameful hollowness of his own miserable, half-baked, scarcely literate platitudes? Now listen. Please listen.
Anybody would think the fool was at the Labour Party conference.
But why on earth did you have to do this?
My God, that's rich coming from you. For the past 2 weeks, you've been yapping about being myself, being honest, showing contempt for the whole bag of tricks.
Okay, but you knew very well what I meant.
And you didn't know what I meant, did you?
No, I didn't, because I thought you were just a party hack.
Thank you very much.
But I was wrong. Last night, you were marvelous. I couldn't believe it was you. You didn't have to think about what you were saying. You just said it, and it was great. It was fabulous. Indignation like that, oh, it's a valuable political weapon. You made them all sit up. Well, it's true. I've lived with you for 5 years, and I just didn't know what you were capable of.
You haven't been listening then, have you?
Nigel, I've never been moved by any of your speeches, any of your political chat, until now. You've obviously got something in you, something pretty formidable.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm just sorry I haven't helped you use it before. Now, you've got to work at it, Nigel. You know how the Labour Party loves a rebel. Well, it's up to you to get in there and get things done. You're not meant for the sidelines. Your place is in the middle of the field. Even if it is muddy out there, that's your place. But to go like that at a civic dinner, oh, it might even mean you lose your deposit. You've got to get elected somewhere first.
I'm not standing again.
And if you're to get anywhere near the centres of power, well, you'll have to smile, compromise, concern yourself with your public image.
Measure your words as carefully as possible. And turn yourself into a dutiful party hack. Never mind, Nigel. Never mind. You see what happens when you dare to break the rules. You, no doubt, wanted to be known as a man of principle, instead of which you're crucified in every paper as the poor fool who made a filthy gesture at a public function. Play by the rules, Nigel. There's no alternative. If you really want to change things, you've got to have the power to do it. You'll just lose your deposit. It's polling day tomorrow, and we'll be humiliated. Nigel can shrug and pack it in, but I can't. I'm lumbered. He can only see the dirt and the decay and the double talk. That's my language. That's the grease that makes the clanking old machine work. You may despise me, but don't blame me, because it's all your fault. There's a lot of good in him, a lot of good. But you'd never vote for a Nigel Barton in a million years.
That's enough, Jack.
Yes, that certainly is enough. You're damn right. It's enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, polling day tomorrow. Tomorrow you have a chance to use your vote. It is perhaps the greatest privilege you possess. I ask you to use it.
Privilege? Privilege? It's polling day tomorrow. Vote, vote, vote for Nigel Barton. Vote. Vote. Vote for... Vote. 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 For Nigel Barton.